Hey everybody, welcome back to the first recap episode of the Overwatch League report. I'm Brian. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a great week one.
Oh, it was honestly everything we could have asked for. I know there were some people who really wanted goats to not, be as prevalent as it was. However, it is what it is, and I enjoyed what we had going on for what it was.
Yeah, and I mean, like obviously, like goats was the most prevalent comp that we saw, but we did see some weird stuff come on certain maps. So
Right.
it wasn't just 100% goats v goats.
We saw a Torbjorn kill
Yeah,
people.
we saw a Torbjorn
Hard.
kill people twice.
Yeah, so like
Fran played Torbjorn in both of their matches.
So yeah, I know we gave Dafran a lot of crap in our recap, and we've been hearing about it ever since. But we want to give Dafran
We've
a
been
little bit of
hearing it,
credit for you know showing us what we've been missing.
showing us that the sweet electric light.
Exactly. Alrighty, so I guess like the biggest thing that stuck out to me was one that Boston Houston Outlaws game was really incredible, so much fun to watch, right down to the wire, and it really kicked off a great Sunday. And Jane obviously talked a lot of smack on stream about the defending champs and the defending runner ups not playing goats very well. What do you think about that?
I think he's the his points are pretty valid.
Right.
If you looked at yes, the Fusion did win their second match, but if you look at London especially, they definitely have a lot of issues on goats. You can
Right.
tell they have they have just not enough experience playing the comp. Specifically, if you look at their match against the Paris Eternal, there are multiple instances where they like overcommit ults to basically lost fights,
Right.
where they don't really have a good understanding of how to play the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say goats, just in case you've only been watching the Overwatch
Right.
League and nothing else, I'm talking about 3-3 or 3 support 3 tanks or triple triple or whatever other weird names that people are using or the casters are using to describe a composition that's been around
Yeah.
for like 5 months that everyone has called goats 100% of the time.
It was kind of surprising hearing them refer to it as 3-3. I saw a lot of people online were like, "What are they talking about when they say this?" And everyone's like, "Goats," and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay." And I guess for a casual
Yeah.
viewer, like it just there's a lot you'd have to give for background, but it still was funny to watch them just refuse to mention goats.
Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know if they were explicitly told not to say the word goats
Mm,
or what, because it definitely was very strange. And it's like I understand, being clear that like calling the composition 3-3 or like whatever makes more logistical sense because you're literally describing what it is.
right.
But like they talk about like the dive meta last season
Mm.
and like dive might come back and we might see that. And I think that they have no issue saying dive, or they didn't at least last season. So like
Yeah, I
that's
wonder if they
you
just
know
don't want to mention because it's like a team that popularized it or what. I don't.
yeah, that's been speculated. I'm not sure what the reason is beyond just saying, oh, it's more clear for casual viewers to
Yeah.
not call it goats. But I mean, it's pretty well known as goats in the greater community.
Yep.
Goats is one syllable. Like you don't have to say like triple
Three
triple or
three. Yeah.
triple. Yeah, it's like and it's in a situation where you have a fast moving game,
Mhm.
having just one syllable to describe what's going on, I think is like makes sense. But I'm not working for Blizzard, so I guess I'm not working for Overwatch League, so
Yeah,
I
I was
don't
gonna
really.
say let's not touch on employment in Blizzard right now.
Oh,
Yeah, this is a dangerous
yeah,
subject, and of course, our hearts go out to all those affected in the massive layoffs. But Ben, let's talk about a little bit better news. What would you like to touch on in this episode?
Yeah, I think I briefly touched upon Spitfire. We could go over in more depth some of the surprises, the like good surprises, and some of the bad surprises or disappointments from the first week of Overwatch League.
Sounds awesome. What's your first big surprise?
I think the best surprise we got coming in
Mm-hmm.
as a Boston Uprising
I knew
fan.
you were gonna say it, so I'm
Yeah,
very happy about this.
yeah, it
I'm
was
wearing
the
my shirt, of
performance.
course.
Yeah, was the performance of the Boston Uprising in this
Yeah.
first week. We started on we started up in a matchup against the New York Excelsior on day one, the second match of the season, and the Boston Uprising almost won that match. It was very close.
Yeah.
So what
So,
was your, yeah, go ahead. Tell me your thoughts on that match.
I had to actually watch it back because I fell asleep. I was very tired on that night. A little drunk. It was Valentine's Day, so drank a
Yeah.
little bit of wine at dinner and then passed out, and I had to go watch it back. But I thought there's a lot of like trepidation. As you might know, and as probably people know, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, so I was completely prepared to just watch like the team be terrible all year. And like I was like mentally like preparing myself, like, okay, I care about the Overwatch League. I'm, doing the series on it, but it might not go my way for the team that I'm gonna be like, standing, for lack of a better word. And then they played so well. It was just like, this is so hopeful. Like this is really amazing, and I think they're only gonna get better. As you said when we were talking off mic, they're gonna get some players back. They're gonna figure out their configurations and fusions. He's good, man. He's really good.
He's very good.
Yeah.
I knew it. I was I when that original signing happened, I was I think I've described before the feeling I had. I think on our Uprising video, I described like seeing, oh my god, they signed Fusions, that's so awesome, and then seeing that he was going to be two-way, I was disappointed because I felt at the time, and I still feel like he could be a huge contributor to the team. I think he's exactly what they need. They needed a really competent Reinhardt player.
Yeah.
And I mean, like he was way more than competent in both matches.
Right. No, and like I know we're talking about the NYXL game, but especially in the Houston Outlaws game, there were times where he completely took over, and you know what? I'm excited. I'm excited to root for like a scrappy underdog team this year.
I mean, even if you look at the XL match, the map that they won on Numbani, a big reason why they were able to hold that point was because of Fusion, because he was just hitting like shatter after shatter constantly, and they were saying that like his like alt build time was like less than a minute. It was crazy. And he would just constantly be able to like impact team fights in a way that like very few other Reinhardts are able to do. I think he's top 5 Reinhardt in the league, honestly.
Yeah, I think one of the casters said it best. They're like, oh, they're like the New England Patriots, not necessarily in terms of like dominance because the league's so young, but in terms of how they approach getting players, like finding maybe players that people don't necessarily look on as like legitimate contenders and bringing them in, making them part of the system. So yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm really happy.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. And like you mentioned, with Color Hex coming off of a suspension, I'm excited to see how they switch up their roster going forward, and hopefully they continue to perform at a high level.
Absolutely. So, what is your next surprise?
I would say my next surprise would be a team that I personally was pretty hard on the preseason for not necessarily reasons of their talent level, but more so just like a sustainability issue that I foresaw of their personalities, and that's I am very surprised to bring that. I think the Atlanta Reign were a huge positive surprise coming into this first week. Not only did they have a 4-0, I mean, they had a 4-0 against the Mayhem, but like they still had a 4-0 for their opening match. Very dominant performance, probably the most dominant performance of the first week.
Right.
Perhaps maybe second to like the Shock Fuel, but like I think they were one of the most dominant performances in a match in the first week, because we saw a lot of very close matches all throughout the 4 days.
Yeah, I think for the most part, like you said, it was a very competitive weekend in terms of teams going back and forth. A lot of overtime games, but there were a few matches like Atlanta and Florida where it was just not close.
Yeah. And then also later in the weekend on Sunday, they played against the Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fusion are currently tied for number 1 right now in the standings, and the Rain almost beat them. They took them to a map 5 to a point 3.
Right.
And like there were many times on that match where the Rain just like totally took control. During I believe it was map 1 on Nepal, the final point of that map, where they were able to flip a fight they had no business winning. They killed Sato really quick. They forced the Fusion to reset, and they weren't able to get back to the point in time.
Right.
Like, there were just multiple times during that match where the Fusion were just kind of like looking like a mess, and especially on Nepal, in my opinion. And if you're able to make a team that's as high caliber as the Fusion look like that, like even with people saying that the Fusion aren't the best GOATS team, like they still have insane talent.
Right.
And I think that's a great indicator for what's to come for the Rain, as long as they can hold everything together.
Just gotta keep it together.
Dafran looked great. Like he was, one of the best Zaryas statistically from the first week. So I mean, I'm excited to see where they do.
Yeah, and not to mention, Dafran was doing certain things with Zarya, like getting to places on the map. I've never seen anyone do that. So he's a good player. I mean, he's a great player. We acknowledge that. I know people came for us for maligning his character, but we do admit he's a good player, and we're excited to see him play well, and hopefully he does keep, on the straight and narrow, because he's going to be one of the best players in the league if he keeps this up.
Yeah, and then something else to mention that happened after we did our Rain video was them bringing Dogman up from their contenders team. And I think that's has been a huge boon to their team, just having that kind of flexibility in that flex support role. I think Dogman is a really, really strong player. He's bringing a lot to the team, so I'm excited to see where they go.
Awesome. What about your third surprise?
My third surprise, and this might be a little controversial, because
bring it.
They played one match and they barely won that match, but nobody expected them to win that match, and that is the Chengdu Hunters.
Yes, they're on the board.
Yeah, they are 1-0. They are currently undefeated.
Yes,
which is more than some other Chinese teams can say.
Oof. Yeah. R.I.P. I'm sure we'll get to that.
Oh, we'll get to that, yeah. But the Chengdu Hunters really impressed me. I think that there's a lot of good things coming out of this team. I think that they have a lot of talent. Jin Mu especially was really impressive for me. On Numbani, the way that he was able to get them the point B on Numbani by kind of zoning out the other team, and then who was it that came in? Who was on? I feel like I should have written this down. Who was playing Sombra on that map? Do you remember?
I do not.
I think it was Elsa. I think Elsa was playing Sombra.
Okay.
Elsa comes in on Sombra and just lands a really clutch EMP, which is something that we should talk about in general for this week, is the introduction of Sombra into the meta, and EMP being kind of a like I've seen like EMOP being kind of thrown around.
No, I mean, but they need it to counter goats, honestly.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like, I like
Um,
that the teams were, and obviously several of them did it, were able to identify that Sombra can be such a powerful hero in the current meta.
yeah, we've seen several players doing that to great success.
Mm.
Surefour, Flex to Sombra. We saw RCK and AKM both playing Sombra, I believe. Nene, especially in the NYXL's first match.
Mm.
Nene on Sombra was a big reason that the XL was able to beat the Uprising in the first
Yeah,
match.
it almost worked out for Houston, too.
Yeah, but and then a lot of the reason people said that Houston lost against the Uprising was because they didn't use Sombra enough. So
Mm. I mean, I won't
yeah,
argue that because they were having a lot of success when
right,
Sombra was out there. And they were not having a lot of success mirroring them at all.
yeah.
But, yeah. What about disappointments?
Disappointments. We can start with a team that most people probably didn't expect to come in and start 0-2, and that's
Yes.
the reigning champs, the London Spitfire.
Ben, what is happening here? Why can't they win?
I think I mentioned earlier, I think that they just have they're not as good on goats as most of the other teams in the
Mm.
league. And I think they played against they played against the Fusion, who I also think weren't great on goats, but they
Yeah.
were better.
Right.
They definitely like lost a bunch of key matches. Like the final fight on Hollywood
Mm.
was like really just bad. Like it was not like it's not the London Spitfire that you expect to see. But
Right.
when you think of the Spitfire, like you think of like Gesture and Fury as a tank line, yes, but a
Mm.
lot of the hype around the Spitfire was Prophet,
Mm.
particularly, and also Bird Ring being able to play these really high level DPS characters.
Right.
And when those characters are not being played in the meta as much, then you're kind of expecting a team like that to not succeed as much.
Mm.
So I think that they had a bad first week.
Mm.
A lot of that had to do with them playing better teams. They lost to the Paris Eternal, which I predicted.
Right. Yeah. No. You want to take a minute here?
Yeah, I'll take a minute to glow. You can go back
Victory
and watch.
lap.
You can go back and watch the Paris Eternal video where I said that they were being massively underrated,
Right.
and that they were going to be like a high mid to high tier team.
Mm.
And they came in and they just totally it wasn't really a particularly close match in my opinion. Like
Right.
the first map was a little close, and then obviously they lost in Kings Row because Len was able to kind of get it together. They brought in Guard,
Mm.
and Guard played Guard is another player who was able to play Sombra really effectively.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that the main issue is that the Eternal is able to play goats at a higher level than any other team I think in the league. I think they are the best team on goats
Well, hey, I
in the
mean,
league.
if that's the case, they're going to be very good this year.
They're going to be very good for at least a stage. I'm not gonna, I would like to hope that they're not going to be they're not going to be coasting with goats all the way to the end. But
Right.
yeah,
So-
I think they when you look at London in the Eternal matchup, there were multiple times, like I mentioned earlier, that they just overcommitted.
Mhm.
They used too many ults at times where they were like losing a fight and like really had no chance of winning it.
Mm.
And the Eternal just did a really good job of taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. The defending champs are 0-2. The season's a lot shorter this year, like a lot shorter when you look at it. 12 games. Are you worried? Is it time to hit the panic button, or is it just like, oh, this is just week one? They'll figure it out.
I think that if you're a London fan, you're definitely not happy or pleased, right? You're when you look at the way they were playing, it seems like it's definitely possible they could continue to struggle
Right.
with their inability to play goats. I think that guard is a really important piece that they brought in. Like I mentioned, he was great on Sombra, and one of the reasons they were able to win was because of him. Or the when the one of the maps they won was because of him. But when they brought him in later on the later map, he was just shut down. The Eternal realized that as long as they could just focus him down, get him out of the fight before he could get EMP up, they would be able to roll from there because the rest of the team just wasn't able to play the mirror composition very well.
Right.
So I think that being able to get guard more up to speed on playing a safer Sombra style, I think that getting the rest of the team up to speed on playing goats at a higher level and understanding the matchup, that's where the team needs to go.
All right. Any more disappointments you want to touch on?
Well, I think the other big disappointment is the Houston Outlaws, who lost to both the Uprising on the final day, like we mentioned, but they also lost to a team that I think a lot of people were also underrating coming in, and that I said that people were underrating in our preview video, the Toronto Defiant.
Yeah, I mean, no one had a more heartbreaking weekend than the Outlaws getting reverse swept and then losing in overtime. That's tough.
Yeah.
To start off 0-2 and to start off that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely feel for the Outlaws fans, but yeah, their team has a lot of issues. I think a lot of people have been pointing to coaching or management decisions as far as who they should be starting. Whether they should be starting Cool Matt versus Spree. People were upset that Jake was being pulled out when Jake is one of the only players in the team who can play Brigitte pretty confidently. So I think just a lot of weird coaching decisions have led them to barely lose. So I think that the contrary to the Spitfire, where I think a lot of their issues are more deep, where they kind of have to do a lot of work to fix things. The Outlaws barely lost both of their matches,
right?
And they were both very winnable matches, and I think a lot of it just came down to some of the decisions of who to start, what compositions to play, some of the more macro strategy. They did have several instances where they showed a lot of competence. Their against the Defiant, their original hold on Route 66, where they were able to keep the Defiant from capping point A for a long time. They almost ran out their time within the Big Earl store area on Route 66. Because they were running this defense that the Defiant just couldn't figure out until they could.
Right.
And I think that the ability for them to do stuff like that gives me a lot of hope for the team in the future. And I think the fact that both of their losses were close definitely makes me think they all hope is not lost for them.
Right. So going into week 2, what big storylines are you looking for?
I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of goats play. I think that let me pull up the matches going into. I actually probably should have been looking at the week 2 schedule a little bit closer, but I think that it's trying to see if the 3 undefeated or the 3 2-0 teams right now can continue to perform, those being the Fusion, Spark, and Excelsior. And I think that the other things to look at are the Uprising and Shanghai match, because one of the disappointments we didn't touch on was that the Shanghai Dragons are 0-42.
Yeah, it's more like a personal disappointment. We would just want to see them win something.
Right, yeah.
And, you said on our preview that their best chance at a win, our first chance at a win is week 2 versus the Uprising. But that was before we saw the Uprising. Do you stand by that? Do you think they can beat the Uprising in their current formation, or what are your thoughts there?
I think they can. I think that the Uprising are probably favored slightly.
Right. No.
But yeah, but it'll definitely be a good match. It'll be an interesting storyline to focus on as well, because this will be
the
Gamsu. Yeah.
Revenge game.
Yep. So we saw kind of like that's something we didn't touch upon in week 1 was with the Dynasty versus Gladiators, kind of the Fisher playing against his own match, and beating his whole team. So yeah, that's something to look forward to, and it, as an Uprising fan, like I obviously want them to win, but and like obviously it'll also be a little embarrassing for the Uprising to be the first team to lose to the Dragons, but I'll on a certain level be happy that the Dragons have kind of like broken the seal,
right,
so to speak.
All right, so this is the last segment of the show. I just want to do something a little bit fun. Obviously, this year, the Overwatch fantasy leagues have kind of been taking off. I see a lot of people talking about them. We're playing in a fantasy league, though I don't really want to go in depth into how my team did, particularly this week. Ben, do you have any advice for people out there who are looking to improve their roster, some players that are probably being slept on that they could pick up?
Yeah, I think that a couple players to look at. Well, I think that first of all, any kind of off tank that is flexing to Sombra is a good person to look at. So those are your Surefours, kind of like Surefour is a DPS player, but he plays a lot of Sombra. Meko especially has performed very highly because of his Sombra play. I think another player to look at in that mold is Michelle from the Dynasty, who a lot of people probably didn't draft because they expected the Dynasty to play Zunba. When you look at the Pacific Challenge that the Dynasty did, Zunba seemed to really overperform when compared to Michelle, so I think a lot of people were probably expecting him to see play. But Michelle came in. He did really great. He was very consistent on both Diva and when he flexed to other heroes like Sombra. So I think that most people will probably have Michelle on the waivers, and I would suggest picking him up. Another pickup potentially would be if you look at some Defiant players who might have been slept on. Somebody like Aid, who I think a lot of people we're not sure the role that he was going to fill, but Aid was a big performer in week 1. And if you look at what the Defiant are going to have, some tricky matchups coming up, but I think on the whole, with the way that fantasy scoring works, having closer matchups is better anyways. So, because it's more likely the games will go to game 5, or the matches will go to game 5.
Right.
So I think that somebody like Aid is a good pickup as well. That probably is not on a lot of people's rosters.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off for week 1?
Nope. Very excited for week 2. Excited for the Uprising match, and hopefully they win and they continue to outperform expectations.
Yeah, and to anybody who wants like other people to talk to about this in our Discord, sometimes we'll be coming on. We'll try to do it more frequently as the season moves on, but we'll be in there just talking about Overwatch, chatting with people who want to talk about it. So make sure you check that out. We'll have the link down below. Make sure you check out us on Twitter at WGEverything, on Instagram at WickedEverything, twitch.tv/WickedEverything. We got a blog, wickedeverything.com. Ben, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ben Sharon, and then, like you mentioned, in the Discord a few times this past weekend during the matches, I would jump in there even if it was just me by myself, and I would commentate the matches. So if you want to join me in there, so I'm not just alone talking to myself, that would be cool.
Please do that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you